What if it rained food? What if Earth was a cube? What if we had 9 lives? What if bits could fly? It's absurd. If money grew on trees, if we didn't have knees, if we walked through life slightly magnetical, it's absurd. Absurd Hypotheticals.
Hello everybody and welcome to Absurd Hypotheticals, the show where we overthink dumb questions so you don't have to. I'm your host Marcus Lehner, and I'm joined here today by Chris Yee and Ben Storms. Say hi, guys.
Hey, I'm Chris.
Hey, I'm Ben.
We're going to go ahead and dive right into our question for this week, which is, what if all sports were on ice? Ben, take it away.
Yeah, so I decided to look at tennis. I just thought that it would be really funny, mostly. That was the main reason, not gonna lie. But also just from like a physics perspective, because tennis involves, a main component of tennis is the way that a thing is impacting the surface. I figured there'd be some fun ramifications there. So to start out, I started looking first at sort of the rule book of tennis, and a fun thing about the rule book of tennis. So it's like a 17-page PDF with like 28 pages of appendices, and it's very precise about how you make a tennis court. It has like all these like very exact measurements of like the sections of the court, and like it talks about like the dimensions of the cord that supports the net, and like all this kind of stuff that's very precise. Except the one thing it's not precise about is what the cord is made out of. It actually doesn't mention that at all. Which that comes up. There are different kinds of tennis courts. There's grass ones and clay ones and like the hard top ones. And there's, major tournaments play on all of them, and all of them work differently. They all react differently and they all play differently. And really the big impact is sort of how fast the court plays. And that's not necessarily like the literal speed, but it's more of the perceived speed. So there's really two factors. So one, it can actually literally be faster. Because basically, when you hit a tennis ball and it hits the court, in that moment where the ball is in contact with the court, the friction causes it to slow down. So the International Tennis Federation, the ITF, they had testing. And so like on a clay court, a shot loses about 43% of its horizontal speed on impact. So like a 67 mile per hour shot will go down to like 38. But on fresh grass, that's more like 33%. So it's like 45 miles per hour after impact. And so when you're playing on grass, you wind up having, less time to react to a shot coming in because of that speed difference. And the other thing that can impact that is the angle of the bounce after impact. So in that moment where it's in contact, basically, what's happening is the bottom of the ball starts moving slower, so it adds a bunch of top spin. And some of that horizontal velocity turns into vertical velocity because of it. So on a higher friction surface like clay, it's going to bounce higher up, which gives you once again more time to react to the shot because it will be in the air for longer. So there's also so that's all based on the coefficient of friction. There's also something I learned about just during this called the coefficient of restitution.
What? Which
is basically how bouncy a surface is.
Oh.
So what it is actually it's the ratio of like if you have something hitting an object, or I guess two objects hitting, it's the ratio of the final velocity, so after the impact, like once it leaves, to the initial velocity, so the speed it comes in at after collision. So that will also affect the bounce height, because if something has a higher coefficient of restitution, it'll be faster coming off the ground after it bounces. So similar thing, clay is bouncier, so it bounces higher,
I also just realized how excited I got about learning that there's a thing called coefficient of restitution.
I know.
Compared to how excited literally anybody else would be. I'm like, ooh, a coefficient I don't know about.
I definitely noticed that, yeah.
That was entirely legitimate. That was not just like me placating Ben, like trying to make it sound like what he's saying is interesting. I was like, ooh, I want to know about this. That was legit excitement.
I sadly had to mostly ignore the coefficient of restitution because I could not find good numbers on it.
All right, sad enough.
You'll be proud. I actually tried to figure it out myself, at least somewhat. So there is a training drill that people use to like train for sports, where you basically drop a tennis ball. You have someone drop a tennis ball from like a distance away from you, and you don't, basically as soon as they drop it, you take off and you try to grab it off the bounce basically. So it's like a combination of reaction time and burst and like hand-eye coordination. And I found videos of people doing it on a tennis court, on a hockey rink, and on like a gym floor. And I was trying to like figure out like how far it had fallen and all that, and I couldn't make it work. So I'm sorry.
No!
I really tried to do it.
I've been there before. I've been there where the numbers don't exist and you try to do it and then you're like, oh, there's a reason they don't exist because it's too complicated.
Yeah. I mean, actually, if I like had time to do it myself, it'd be pretty easy.
Yeah.
Because you would just have to like drop from the same height and do it consistently and do that, and then you know look at the video to figure it out. But I didn't have time to do that. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah, I find that a lot of times where I'm like, I'll be, depending on what day I'm prepping, I'm like, oh, to figure this out for real, I need to use an integral. Do I?
Right.
Is it the night before? Then I don't do the integral. If I'm like 3 days ahead, I'm like, all right, let's break out the math.
The real problem for me wasn't so much the math, much as the like I have to go to like a hockey rink and with a tennis ball
You have to find some ice.
and a video camera. Yeah. So, but we can do most of like what we actually care about with the coefficient of friction. So the lowest coefficient of friction used, which I know we've talked about this many times on the podcast, but it's basically just how slidey something is. The lowest used for like Grand Slam play in tennis is the grass at Wimbledon, which is like a 0.5 to 0.6, where for people who don't know coefficients of friction, the lower the number, the slidier it is, basically. Yeah, you can figure it out. Just Google it or whatever. I don't know. I don't care.
We're imparting knowledge here,
yeah,
Ben.
it's knowledge. You know, we've talked about this a lot.
So
You
for
figure
us
it out.
to tell them what to do.
Yeah, but the coefficient of friction on ice, I guess, always will. Coefficients of friction will always depend on the material that's actually sliding, but particularly for ice because of like the moisture component. But for wood on ice, which was probably the most like regular thing I could find, it was like a 0.05, so a full order of magnitude slipperier. Sure. More slippery than the fastest court used for like Grand Slam play. So this is going to play very fast, which is going to be fun. And to try to get like an idea of how much faster. So there is, the ITF made this court pace rating, which is basically designed to take both the coefficient of friction and the coefficient of restitution into effect and give a like number for how fast it's going to seem like a court is. So it ranges from slow, which is less than 29, to fast, which is more than 45. In the documentation they had, the highest they had like classified had a score of 70. So the formula is basically 100 times 1 minus the coefficient of friction plus 150 times basically the difference between the coefficient of restitution and the average coefficient of restitution. So for the most part, you do care about the friction. So assuming that I just assumed like an average coefficient of restitution, which I don't think is true. I think it's actually less bouncy than average just from looking at the videos, but I don't have any way to actually, prove that. But assuming it's average, you wind up with a court pace rating of 95.
Oh boy.
Which is quite a bit faster than like literally the fastest they've, measured. So what's going to actually happen here is that every shot is going to stay very fast and come off at a very shallow angle. So it's going to be really hard to return literally any shot while playing ice tennis. Also, other small factor, you're going to slide all over the fucking place while this is happening.
Yeah, having played a bunch of tennis, it's really important to be able to like change directions and change your momentum from one side to the other. Yeah,
so what winds up being really fun here is that kind of the way that tennis plays under these circumstances, which, by the way, once again, technically you could play a legal game of tennis on ice. There's nothing saying you can't in the rule book. They also actually, I forgot to mention this, they actually have separate rules in there for both wheelchair and beach tennis. So there is a precedent for setting up these rules. So, ITF, you could do this if you wanted to.
Beach tennis? What is beach tennis?
is exactly what it sounds like. I had not gone into the rules because it sounded very stupid. I don't know how it would work because I feel like the ball is just going to stop. But
Yeah.
anyway, I don't know. That one was actually like, the wheelchair tennis was like a section in the rules, like an extra page for the different rules. The beach tennis was just like a link to like, just go here and read about it. It was pretty funny. But anyway, the way it's going to actually play on ice, I think it's basically a series of like penalty kicks in soccer. Because I don't think if you serve it, I think it's going to be almost impossible to return it. It's basically like if you guess right where it's going to go and get there at exactly the right time and kind of luck into it, you can return the shot. Because it's barely going to slow down. So it's going to be going like, you know, a tennis serve is what, like 120 miles an hour?
Yeah.
Like however fast your arm is going. Probably like as fast as the fastest pitch or something.
Yeah. I think it winds up, I think that's kind of like the peak that you see in like tournament stuff. It's like 120-ish. I should have looked that up. That would have been smart. But it's still going to be going almost that same speed, and it's going to be very low to the ground. So if you can get your racket on it, if you guess right and aren't sliding out of position, you might be able to return it. What's good for you is if you can return it, I don't think that the other, you know, the server can actually get over to return your return. I think it's basically, if you can successfully return the shot, you probably win the point.
I mean, yeah, it's you just can't like.
Once you
can't
start
get any
moving, you
momentum going
can't
anywhere.
stop. Yeah, exactly.
Would you allow skates?
I don't know how much that helps.
Yeah, I don't think it would make much of a difference.
I think with at least with skates, you could like be doing a circle around and have like a slightly better chance.
So here's the other thing about skates. I did think about this a little bit. On skates, you definitely cannot serve as hard.
Oh yeah.
Because, you know, you like, you know, sort of launch up to get up to like a high point to, you know, get the angle on it, which you're not going to be able to do very well from stationary on skates.
Yeah, not great.
So
springy skates.
It's going to be pretty hard to like, you know, get the power required to serve. I mean, I guess, you know, clearly you don't have to serve quite as effectively now. So you could be on skates. I don't know how much it helps. It might help a little bit.
Seems like a very poor band-aid.
Yeah, right. So I think it winds up being a pretty unexciting game, aside from the fact that you have people like dodging, you know, 110 mile per hour tennis balls coming at them, which is fun, I guess.
I mean, that could be a sport in its own.
Yeah, it probably is somewhere. Isn't that like American Gladiator, kind of? Like half of the games they would do in American Gladiator?
It'll be the next Wipeout challenge.
Pretty much, yeah.
You're just going to have Roger Federer serving up 150 mile an hour serves and people trying to walk across a wall.
Yeah, so I guess kind of my final conclusion with regards to ice tennis is that this is kind of a fun place to land in one of these, you know, what if sport was X questions, because although the sport doesn't particularly work anymore, it is, I think, the only one we've seen where, by the rules of the sport, it is technically legal and valid.
Still officially tennis.
Yeah, it is still tennis, but it's definitely not, you know, not exactly the same. So
this ain't your mom's tennis.
Yeah, unless your mom is very cold all the time.
Aww.
Anyway, Marcus, what did you do?
I looked at golf because I basically just wanted to find out, would the ball ever fucking stop? So I was doing a kind of similar thing, looking at the different frictions, but for golf, friction is actually less important than the drag force of the wind. So there's been I found a lot of research on different golf ball drag speeds and performance and all this.
And like how the dimples affect it?
Yeah, and how the dimples affect it. So basically, the way so golf balls have these little dimples on them, and they're not just for style. So what they actually do is when the ball is spinning, they'll disturb the air around it, and that disturbing of the air makes it easier for the ball to transition from a turbulent flow, which is like, you know, air going in all directions, and a laminar or a straight flow where it's kind of just like gliding through. Like it makes the ball more aerodynamic. Only nobody actually knows exactly how it works because the aerodynamics actually end up being very complicated. So people have like done studies and just like put a bunch of golf balls in wind tunnels, so I have like numbers for their drag coefficients. But as far as like the actual science, they're like, well, yeah, from here it goes to this kind of flow based on this, but no one really gets why.
I know they did something about it on Mythbusters, like they put dimples on a car to see if it was more fuel efficient. I don't remember what the outcome was.
I bet you it was not. So anyway, so really when you do a typical drive, this is a professional drive, like a good drive. The ball velocity at impact will be about 148 miles an hour, which is pretty cool. But by the time the ball hits the ground, the ball speed has dropped to about 50 miles an hour. So almost disappointingly, the problem is that the drag of the wind is what's slowing down our ball more than the friction of the ground, of course. Because when it hits the ground, it's basically kind of teeters out. But when I actually was doing up the friction numbers, the friction of a ball of a golf ball on ice is basically negligible compared to the wind drag. We don't have to waste all that distance going up and down. And I had to check my math a few times because not only that, when you hit a golf ball, the club is angled a bit so that it hits it at like the 45-degree angle that gets it the furthest distance. It actually puts a lot of backspin on the ball. And when you look at the flight path for a golf ball, you can actually see how much that backspin really like stops it moving forward. And it's actually, I think the spin on the balls actually hurts the distance like even more than the general wind resistance against the ball. But since we're on this ice, we don't have to worry about that spin because we're not going to hit our ball up anymore. We're just going to hit it straight fucking forward. So a good golf drive is say 300 yards, about 275 meters. So if doing the math out, if we just hit it flat along the ice and have no spin, by the time our ball goes from the in-air distance from 150 miles an hour to 50 miles an hour, instead of traveling 275 meters, it's going to go 1,000 meters. So we get more than triple the distance just on the in-air part.
How far is a typical golf hole?
So it depends on they vary. So basically, if you have a short golf course like a par 3, it'll be somewhere in the range of like 300, 400 yards. And so what you'll do, because you basically have your one shot, you drive it, and you're pretty close. Your second shot gets you on the green,
right? Yeah,
like a mid-size shot, and then the last shot gets it in the hole is the par 3. Longer courses can be like 500 plus, where it's like you hit it, and you do 2 drives, and then you hit it onto the green, et cetera, et cetera. But our ball's not stopped at this 1 kilometer we've already hit it. The ball's still going 50 miles an hour, and now as the ball decelerates, the wind speed becomes less and less of a concern. So in what I'm calling the middle bit, from our speed going from 50 miles an hour slowing down to 10 miles an hour.
That's a technical term.
Yeah, the middle bit. The middle section, wind speed is still controlling, but less extremely than it was before. And so to get from 50 miles an hour to 10 miles an hour, it takes our ball 63 seconds to slow down.
That is a long time.
And over that time, we will have traveled an additional 1,400 meters. So now we're at 2.4 kilometers, and our ball is still going 10 miles an hour. And so at 10 miles an hour is when the wind drag starts to be not a huge deal. And now it's really just the friction of the ice. And so to get from 10 miles an hour to 0 miles an hour, it takes 400 seconds. It's going to take just under like 7 minutes for our ball to come to a full and complete stop.
Golf is going to take forever.
At which point now we have traveled another 1,150 meters. So altogether, our shot takes 474 seconds, or just about 8 minutes to end, and our ball will travel an average of 3.5 kilometers, or 2.2 miles. So obviously, you can't really play on a golf course,
right?
So my first thought was, where would we actually go and play it? Where would we have our golf course? And then I got really excited because my first thought was rivers. And because you're going to have a really long stretch of fairly straight, uninterrupted field. And the fun thing about rivers is that they're actually slightly sloped, or else the water wouldn't flow.
So you go even farther.
So I'm like, oh my god, is the ball even going to stop ever? So unfortunately, when the slope of a river, like I was looking at the Mississippi, the slope is negligible. Like the slope on main stretch of the Mississippi is like 1 centimeter per kilometer, which doesn't actually mean our ball is going to go significantly further by any stretch of the imagination.
What is that in like percent grade?
So 1 centimeter, it's one. I think it's 1% maybe, 1/100, 1 centimeter per kilometer.
Well, it's not 100, right?
It's getting more than 100.
100th.
Oh, 100th.
100.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. It's like 100. So for every 1,000 millimeters, you go up 10 millimeters.
Isn't a kilometer 1,000 meters?
Oh yeah, so it's even less. That's why I was gonna say 100 doesn't seem quite right.
Yeah, I was like, that's way too
so yeah,
high.
It's one on 10,000 then.
Yeah.
Either way, like I said, I did the math out. The numbers didn't come anywhere close
Right,
to being that exciting. And so I was a bit bummed on river, and I realized actually rivers kind of suck for this because rivers are actually quite difficult to freeze because the water is always moving. It's a lot harder to freeze something that is one, a big body of water, and two, moving all the time because it's able to transfer the heat, and the motion itself causes some heat, and it's hard to do it. So what I did is I just switched to highways because highways are also kind of perfect because they're long and flat, and if you're doing a golf course, you could just easily you could more easily flood a highway with ice, and ignoring the traffic problems associated with that, you could make yourself a nice little golf course.
And golf is more important than traffic.
Golf is more important than traffic, and so basically where I concluded my whole golf lesson here is that if you make an 18-hole golf course from Boston to New York City, your average par would be 5.4. So you could literally, if you just average 5 to 6 strokes per hole, you could play one course from Boston all the way to New York City. Your game would take a while, I admit. It's about 218 miles, but you could do it.
Makes the trip more interesting.
Oh yeah, definitely. Especially when it's like you're doing it for like 3 weeks.
Yeah.
Chris, what do you have? What sport did you do?
So I looked at baseball, and I don't really know why I did baseball. I was sort of just like drawn to it for no reason at all.
Wow, great.
Yeah, so I just picked it. And the first thing I obviously want to do is see if anything really changed that much. So like different components of baseball: throwing/pitching, catching, batting, fielding, base running. They all seem pretty, like they're all going to be pretty much the same. So like maybe just like slightly harder. That was like my gut reaction when I was just looking at them. So to like get inspiration, I started looking at the past because baseball on ice actually has like a historical background to it. So ice baseball is actually popular in the 19th century. It was like a thing that they would regularly play.
Weird.
So the earliest record of baseball on ice was
baseball on ice.
was in January 16, 1860. There were 2 local teams in Rochester, New York, and the score ended up being 27-25.
Oh, geez.
Wow.
Yeah. Very high score. But after they played that first game, it was actually very popular. And like papers were covering it, and they're talking about how like fun it was to watch. And then they had another game a year later, and they had 2,500 spectators. So like gained popularity over that year. And then a month after that game, the official baseball association at the time, the National Association, they held like an official game for baseball on ice. And it was between the Brooklyn Atlantics and Charter Oaks.
The who?
The Charter Oaks?
The who?
I don't know. And the Brooklyn Atlantics won 36-27.
Oh man, even higher scoring.
Yeah, even higher score. I don't know how long these games took. I imagine pretty long. But it was so popular that, well, they actually played that game in New York City. It wasn't in Rochester. It was like in the center of the city. And it was actually so popular that New York Times covered it. And they said that, or they described it as lively and exciting. So I guess people liked it.
Baseball on ice, lively and exciting, says the New York Times.
And they actually noted that the players didn't really have that much trouble on the skates. as much trouble as they expected. Obviously, it was a little more difficult, but the players could deal with it. And there is actually footage of women playing baseball on ice in Toronto as late as 1924. So it lasted for a while, and eventually it did die out because obviously we don't really do it right now anymore. But the thing is, like, the sport that they play, the rules really didn't change that much from what just normal baseball is. So they used the older version of baseball rules, which is like, so they didn't have gloves and they were only allowed to do underhand pitches. But pretty much everything else was the same. The only difference that I could find was that they were allowed to overrun the bases. So like, because obviously it's hard to stop on skates.
My first mental image of it was someone like running towards first and like hitting first and then trying to turn and just not like their body turns 9 degrees, but their momentum does not change.
I mean, I guess they tried it out for a while and there were like injuries and stuff. So eventually they're just like, no, you can just go past the base as long as you turn right instead of left towards the other base.
Yeah, which is how it works always with first base in baseball.
Right.
So they just
and that's
extended
actually,
that. Yeah.
That's actually where that rule stems from.
Wait, really?
Yeah.
What?
So that wasn't a rule before ice baseball. And then when they brought baseball back in the summer, once all the ice melted, they kept that rule for first base.
Wow. Okay, then.
That's like the first bit of baseball trivia I find actually interesting.
So obviously this stopping at a base is a problem, like stopping just quickly. And for my version of the sport, I could just do this overrun rule, but that's kind of a boring solution. I didn't want to do that. So normally, like, the primary way of stopping at a base stopping at a base quickly is to slide. And you just use the friction of the ground to stop yourself. Obviously, this doesn't really work that well on ice. You don't slow down that much. And like when people slide, a lot of times they'll slide like feet first, and you don't want to slide sharp skates into a player. So
Right.
Yeah, no.
Not the best option. So the first step I did was just to get rid of the physical base. I replaced it actually with a mound of snow just to fit the theme. I wanted to keep the sliding aspect of baseball. So instead of just like running to the base, I was like, why not just make the entire stretch one giant slide? Like, a slide from home plate to first base, second base, and so on. So like the runners won't actually wear skates. They'll just it's not going to be like a slide. You're not like a playground slide, but like you'll slide on the ice.
Yeah.
So I was like, the batter will just hit the ball, and when they hit the ball, instead of running, they'll just like dive towards first base and slide all the way. Obviously, it's kind of painful to dive on ice because ice is hard. And one solution is they could wear pads, but that's also a boring solution. I did not want to do that. So my idea was, why not put a sled right next to home plate?
Hit the ball, drop the bat, grab the sled.
Yeah, you'll dive with the sled all the way to first base, and that can work. And it's actually, so there's a very specific type of sled that works better on ice than just like the saucer. I don't know what they're called, but like
trash can lids.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're called flexible flyers, or they work better on ice. And they're basically just wooden sleds, and they have steel runners on the bottoms.
Mm-hmm.
The one problem is that it doesn't really work with multiple runners on the base because you need the sled to reset for the next runner behind him. So that's kind of a problem. And also, like, the runner isn't the only one that dives. Like, fielders, they often dive to catch balls and stuff. Like, and you can't just have like a bunch of sleds on the field just in case they dive on that one spot. That's
Says you.
So my solution to this is the uniform will just have a sled attached to it.
Oh no.
So you'll just have like a flexible flyer. I don't know how you're going to attach it, like sew it into the uniform or like glue it or something.
Attached to the nipples directly.
And then just whenever a player wants to slide, they'll just dive on their sled that is attached to their stomach. And nothing else in baseball really has to change.
This is it's only a slight uniform change and we're good.
Yeah, you'll just have a sled attached to your uniform, and that's it. And then baseball on ice works.
Sounds like Chris's could also just be within the rules of of existing baseball.
I doubt they have a rule against that.
I mean, I guess my ice golf wouldn't be against the rules either.
We'll play on the highway?
I mean, if it's a legal course.
I guess so.
No one says that. I don't think there's I haven't checked, but I don't think there's a rule that you can't play on the I-95. So did we all three of us make a legal sport within the existing rules of our sport?
I
I think we did. Why don't we
technically,
go
yeah.
outside and play them right now?
It's too cold.
Well, not for... Damn it, they're all ice
I don't
sports.
want to.
All ice sports, man. It has to be cold.
But it's cold.
It is supposed to snow today in Boston in real life, which sucks. But I'm not going to complain about that. We're going to take a break, go play our sports, and come back and do our Would You Rather question.
You already complained about it, and then you said you weren't going to complain about it.
Ben, are you ready? This one's going to you.
I am ready.
Would you rather be locked overnight in a department store or amusement park?
Huh. Okay.
What kind of departments? I guess just like a normal, like a Sears.
We're talking like
Or
Macy's,
not
Sears.
Sears,
something
Let's say a good sized Target.
Oh,
Good-sized
Target.
Oh, so they have like a grocery section too.
See, that's a question. That's a very important question. Target changes a lot if it's Target.
It's like, I love Target.
No. Okay, all right. So, okay, let me walk through why this is so important. So, amusement park seems like it's a lot of fun, but I don't think you can operate the ride while riding it.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking too.
And I feel like there's a chance. I feel like I've had enough, seen enough roller coasters like break down and get stranded enough to not want to ride it without anyone controlling it, even if you had like a test mode or something.
And I think it kind of takes some of the fun away if you're just by yourself and no one else is around.
This is also true.
I mean, you add the fun of you get to just do whatever the fuck you want in the whole amusement park.
Well, yeah, but I mean, like, if you can't really do it reliably, that takes away a lot of that fun. Also, at some point, you are probably going to want to sleep a little bit, and you're kind of just outside in the dark.
There's nowhere to sleep.
There's plenty of there's indoor spaces in amusement parks,
but not as
Are
comfortable
there
as
like soft areas?
Yeah.
I guess they have like the stuffed animals. You could collect those and put
that
them
could work.
somewhere.
Yeah, get all like the big teddy bears and pile them up. Okay, so that could work. But like, okay, so if it's like a big Target, you have a bunch of TVs and electronics. You have a bunch of snacks. You have pretty much any movie that's come out in the last couple of years.
You have like a whole bedding section.
Yeah. It's like you have pretty much everything you need.
So really, I guess the question is, obviously, I think the department store, just on the fact that it's gonna be climate controlled, is gonna be the comfier one.
Right.
It's gonna be the department store one is kind of just like I'm inside in a nice place where I can just grab. Actually, here's a question.
I think I had the same thought you just did.
What happens? Like, are we gonna count in the morning where someone comes in and finds you, and you have now unwrapped, unboxed 2 giant TVs and have repurposed the bathroom aisle to be your own personal theater? You're gonna get in trouble there. It's a lot easier to sneak out of an amusement park.
I have a further question. So I feel like for the most part, stores like that restock overnight.
Oh. That is a solid point.
Yeah,
so
that's true.
that kind of complicates things a little bit.
I mean, how long are they going to be restocking for? It's not going to be all night.
Probably not all night, no. But you're going to have a lot less time.
Be like an hour, maybe? I don't know.
I figure let's say they're out by 2. They're done like restocking and cleaning, and they're out by 2. And they open it. See, they're back in at like 6 next morning. So you don't have much playtime, for lack of a better word.
Yeah, especially if you want to do like any of the, I don't know, sleep time.
Right, yeah. So,
I mean, I guess, are we trying to like have fun, or are we trying to practically get through the night?
I think if it's just one night, it's have fun.
Yeah, it's not fun. You're not gonna die. Like, you could literally feel none of your, like, except
Right,
like
but you'll get,
hypothermia.
Hungry and stuff.
Yeah, you're gonna be.
I feel like you'll get hungry at the amusement park.
There's snacks and stuff. There's they sell like candy.
They do have snacks, yeah.
But it's like overnight. Like, if you eat dinner and then do it, like, you might be peckish, but you're not gonna be like, oh my god, I'm gonna die.
Right. Yeah. There'll be snacks you can eat. You're okay. Maybe not as like broad a variety as you would have at, let's say, Target, but you can have snacks.
Because if you're not trying to sleep, then like comfort isn't that big of a deal at the amusement park. Assuming that like the weather is good.
Right.
Yeah, the fact that you can't operate the rides is
Really puts a damper on it. So I guess if it's like Six Flags, that's a problem. Something like Disney World, where it's a lot more like experience type things, I think you have fewer problems.
Yeah, because you could like start up. You could find the button to like start up like a VR experience or something. That would be a lot easier to do.
Or like one of those motion rides.
Yeah, that you could totally do.
And there's probably just enough like actually like going behind. You get to go behind the scenes. Like a Disney place, you get to go behind the scenes. You can explore the.
I don't know, but I feel like that'd be kind of creepy with all the animatronics.
That is a good point. Actually, it would be really weird.
I feel like I would be in like a horror movie or like Five Nights at Freddy's or something.
Yeah. So that's also a good point.
Here's the other thing that I'm thinking of is, you have this night, and then 3 years down the line, you're telling the story of your overnight, and this will probably be one of the more interesting stories of your life, maybe. But I don't think the department store one's that interesting. Stuck overnight in an amusement park, you can get up to some shenanigans. That makes some good stories.
True. You're right. It's definitely the better story.
It's a better story, but is it a better story because it's the better experience or because it's the worst experience? Because a lot of good stories are because it's a bad night.
So I guess, yeah. Think about the department stores. The things you'd be doing would not. But it's just like
it'd be stuff
you do at home.
Normally do.
Yeah, like it's much less exciting.
The amusement park's the experience.
Yeah.
The amusement park, though, like it's a lot more obvious. Like if you're trying to stay discreet, I don't know like what the chances are of getting caught, but I feel like if you're turning on rides and like turning on all the lights at an amusement park, it's going to be very obvious that you're there.
That said, an amusement park does not have cameras everywhere.
That is also true.
As opposed to like a department store, which is worried about like petty theft.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. I think it's time to. I'm gonna say amusement park. I pick amusement park because I think it's the experience. I think you could make some stuff work, and I am really, really craving one of those big bags of popcorn, like so bad right now. Maybe because I didn't eat yet today, but
I'm like always disappointed by popcorn at amusement parks for some reason.
I mean, they're not always good, but I can envision it, and my mouth is literally watering right now.
I agree. I'm gonna go to amusement park. It's the experience.
I'm gonna go to department store. I feel like I'm just gonna be way too creeped out by the amusement park by myself at night.
I can see that. I don't agree with it, but I can see it.
Yeah, so that's that. And speaking of being all by yourself, listeners.
Oh, that's sad.
Wow, yeah.
It's a little sad, but we, for respecting our real lives and the holidays and everything, we are going to be on a short hiatus for the month of January. So we will not be releasing our regular weekly episodes during January. We will be back on February 4th?
3rd, I think. 3rd. I'm pretty sure it's 3rd.
Yep, we'll be back February 3rd. So
we still have a couple more episodes before the hiatus starts, but we wanted to give you a heads up.
Yeah, so
ahead of time.
Starting January 6th, 13th, 20th, and 27th, we will not be releasing a regularly scheduled episode, and we'll be back on February 3rd. But if you desperately need a episode during January, you can sign up for our Patreon. Go to www.patreon.com/absurdhypotheticals and become one of our wonderful hypothetical pals. For just $1 a month, you unlock all tiers, all the goodies. Just one tier, $1.
All the one tiers.
All the one tiers. You unlock all of the one tier. And what you get with that tier is, well, the best of it is that you get access to our behind-the-scenes episodes, where once a month we will release a episode where it's a bit more casual, laid back. We talk about how we make the show. We talk about our previous month's questions. We do a bunch of chit-chat. And we will be releasing a behind-the-scenes episode in the January for the Patreon members so that you guys do not miss out on a single month of content.
During our hiatus. And I don't know, we're still going to do one in February too, and I don't know what we're going to talk about in it, because we usually talk about our month of questions.
Yeah, usually.
But we'll think of something. We'll think of random stuff to talk about.
We're going to ramble so hard, and it's going to be wonderful.
Oh, yeah.
But, yeah, so hiatus in honor of the holidays and the new year. And speaking of, you can join us next week where we answer our wonderful Merry Christmas question What if you could perfectly train reindeer?